Billionaire yells, "Who made this dish?" The waitress who prepared it stunned everyone. What if one taste could change everything you thought you knew about success? Robert Sterling sat in the corner booth of Milano's, the city's most exclusive restaurant, cutting into what should have been another forgettable business dinner. At 42, he'd built an empire worth billions, but food had become just fuel, tasteless, expensive fuel. His dinner companion droned on about quarterly projections, while Robert mechanically lifted the fork to his mouth. Then something extraordinary happened. The first bite of pasta stopped him cold. The flavors weren't just combined, they were woven together like a symphony, each ingredient singing in perfect harmony. His grandfather's voice echoed from childhood memories. "Bobby, real cooking comes from the heart, not a cookbook." Robert hadn't thought about those words in 30 years. He dropped his fork, stood abruptly, and called across the bustling dining room in a voice that silenced every conversation. "Who made this dish? Where are you watching from tonight?" The elegant restaurant froze as if someone had pressed pause on an expensive movie. Crystal glasses stopped clinking, silverware ceased scraping against fine china, and even the soft jazz seemed to hold its breath. Robert Sterling's voice carried the authority of a man accustomed to getting answers, but tonight something felt different, vulnerable, almost desperate. Elena Martinez felt her heart skip as she emerged from the kitchen, wiping flour-dusted hands on her apron. At 37, she'd worked every position in restaurants from dishwasher to sous chef, but tonight was supposed to be special. The head chef had called in sick, and for the first time in 3 years, she'd been allowed to prepare the evening's pasta special using her grandmother's secret recipe. The same recipe that had once fed her family through the hardest times in their small village outside Naples. I made the linguine alle vongole," Elena said softly, her slight accent making the Italian words sound like poetry. The dining room remained unnaturally quiet, as if everyone sensed they were witnessing something important. Robert studied her face. Kind eyes that held stories, hands that spoke of hard work, and a dignity that couldn't be bought or taught. "What's your name?" "Elena Martinez, sir." "How long have you been cooking professionally?" 15 years, she replied, though her voice carried traces of uncertainty. She'd never been questioned by someone this important, someone whose suit probably cost more than she made in 3 months. Robert took another bite, closing his eyes as memories of his grandfather's small kitchen in Brooklyn flooded back. Giuseppe Sterling had arrived from Italy with nothing but recipes written on torn paper and dreams bigger than his broken English could express. He'd taught young Bobby that food was love made visible, that cooking was about feeding souls, not just stomachs. "This tastes like..." Robert's voice caught unexpectedly. "Like something my grandfather used to make." Elena's expression softened. She recognized that look, the same expression she'd seen on countless faces when they tasted food that reminded them of home, of love, of being truly cared for. But as the moment stretched between them, Elena noticed the other diners beginning to whisper. Some looked annoyed by the interruption, others curious. She was just a kitchen worker interrupting a billionaire's dinner. What was she thinking? "Where did you learn to cook like this?" Robert asked, his business dinner completely forgotten. His companion had already excused himself, muttering about rescheduling, but Robert remained fixed on Elena. "My grandmother, Nana Julia," Elena said, her eyes brightening despite her nervousness. "She came here from Naples in 1953 with 7 children, and this recipe written on a piece of cardboard. She always said the secret wasn't in the ingredients, it was in cooking with gratitude." Robert felt something crack open inside his chest, a feeling he'd buried under years of boardroom meetings and profit margins. Giuseppe Sterling was my grandfather's name. He came from Naples too, around the same time. He used to say cooking was prayer made edible. Elena's face lit up with recognition. "The old ways. My nana always said food carries the cook's spirit. When you cook with love, people taste it." "I haven't tasted anything like this since I was 12, Robert admitted, surprising himself with the confession. "After my grandfather died, my family, we stopped cooking. Everything became takeout and restaurant meals." He gestured around the upscale dining room. Places like this. Elena noticed the sadness in his voice, the way his shoulders seemed to carry invisible weight. Sometimes we forget where we came from, she said gently. But the heart remembers. That's why you recognized it. As they spoke, Elena became aware of the maitre d' hovering nearby, clearly uncomfortable with this extended conversation. She was just kitchen staff, after all. The head chef would return tomorrow, and she'd go back to prep work and washing dishes. This was probably her only chance to cook her grandmother's food for someone who truly understood its meaning. Sir, perhaps we should. The maitre d' began. No, Robert said firmly, never taking his eyes off Elena. I want to know more about this recipe. About your grandmother. Elena felt her heart swell with pride and gratitude. Someone actually cared about Nana Julia's legacy, about the stories baked into every dish. If this moment touched your heart, please give this story a thumbs up. But as she began to share memories of her grandmother's tiny kitchen in Naples, Elena caught sight of the restaurant manager approaching with a stern expression. Her hands trembled slightly as she realized she might be in trouble for stopping her work to talk with a customer, even a customer who'd asked for her specifically. What would happen when reality crashed back into this magical moment? Martinez, what are you doing out here? The restaurant manager's voice cut through their conversation like a knife. You're supposed to be in the kitchen. Elena's face flushed red. Mr. Harrison, this gentleman asked who made the dish, and I. That's enough. Return to your station immediately, Harrison said sharply, clearly mortified that kitchen staff was bothering such an important customer. Sir, I apologize profusely for this interruption. Please allow me to offer. Stop, Robert said, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had built empires. Elena, please continue what you were saying about your grandmother. Elena looked between the two men, feeling trapped. She needed this job desperately. Her mother's medical bills were mounting, and her younger brother's college tuition was due next month. She couldn't afford to lose her income, but she also couldn't ignore the genuine interest in Robert's eyes, something she rarely saw anymore. My Nana always said that when you cook for someone, you're giving them part of your soul, Elena continued quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. She taught me that every ingredient has a story, every dish has a purpose beyond just feeding hunger. Robert leaned forward, completely absorbed. What happened to her recipes? Do you still have them? I have them all, Elena said, touching her heart. Some written down, most just here. She made me promise to never let them die. Her voice wavered slightly. But I rarely get to use them. Most places want fast food, not slow love. The phrase hit Robert like lightning. Slow love. That's what had been missing from his life for decades. Everything had become fast, efficient, profitable, but empty of the slow love his grandfather had poured into every meal. Harrison shifted impatiently, clearly wanting to end this conversation, but Robert ignored him completely. Elena, I want to ask you something, and I hope you'll consider it carefully. Elena's heart pounded. Have you ever faced a moment that could change everything? Let us know in the comments below. I've been looking for someone to help me with a project, Robert continued. Something that honors the old ways of cooking, the kind your grandmother and my grandfather believed in. Elena felt the world shift beneath her feet. Was this really happening? But even as hope bloomed in her chest, she saw Harrison's disapproving glare and remembered her precarious position. One wrong move could cost her everything she'd worked so hard to build. What choice would she make when everything hung in the balance? What kind of project? Elena asked, her voice trembling with possibility and fear. Robert glanced around the restaurant, suddenly seeing it through new eyes. The cold marble, the pretentious atmosphere, the way food had become performance art instead of nourishment. I want to open a place that serves real food. Food that tells stories, like your grandmother's recipes. Food that feeds more than just hunger. Elena's eyes widened. You want to start a restaurant? Not just any restaurant. A place where cooking traditions don't die, where grandmother's recipes live on, where food means something again. Robert's voice grew stronger with each word. I have the resources to build it, but I need someone who understands what it really means to cook with love. Harrison stepped forward, his face red with indignation. Mr. Sterling, surely you can't be serious about. I'm completely serious, Robert said, standing up to face the manager. This woman just reminded me of everything I've forgotten about what food should be. Everything my grandfather tried to teach me before I got lost in spreadsheets and profit margins. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Sir, I don't know what to say. I've dreamed of sharing Nana's recipes with people who would appreciate them, but I never thought. Sometimes the universe puts exactly the right person in exactly the right place, Robert said gently. My grandfather used to say that too. He pulled out his business card and handed it to Elena. I'd like to offer you the position of head chef at this new restaurant. Your grandmother's recipes would be the foundation of our menu. Elena stared at the card, her hands shaking. But I don't have formal culinary school training. I've never run a kitchen. I'm just... You're exactly what I've been looking for without knowing it, Robert interrupted. Someone who cooks with soul, not ego. Someone who understands that the best meals aren't just about technique, they're about tradition, love, and feeding people's hearts. If you've been enjoying this story, please subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales like this one. Elena looked around the room, seeing the faces of other diners watching this impossible scene unfold. A billionaire offering a kitchen worker her dream job because of a single plate of pasta made with her grandmother's love. Mr. Sterling, she said softly, I accept. But as joy flooded through her, Elena realized this was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself and her dreams. 6 months later, Elena stood in the kitchen of Nana's table, watching the sunset paint golden light across the restaurant's warm brick walls. The space felt like a living testament to both their grandparents' dreams, intimate tables surrounded by photographs of Italian families, herb gardens growing by the windows, and the constant aroma of food made with slow love. Robert appeared in the kitchen doorway, rolling up his sleeves. This had become their evening ritual, him helping with the final preparations, both of them honoring the traditions their grandparents had cherished. The billionaire who'd once eaten only for necessity now understood that sharing a meal was sacred. How did the food critics' visit go? Elena asked, though she could see the answer in Robert's peaceful smile. She said it was like tasting childhood memories she'd never had, Robert replied, taking his place beside her at the prep station. She called your grandmother's ragu a prayer in sauce form. Elena laughed, a sound that had become the heartbeat of their restaurant. Nana would have loved that. She always said critics think too much and feel too little, but when they finally taste love, they recognize it immediately. The restaurant had become more than either of them imagined. Families gathered around tables, sharing stories between courses. Elderly couples rediscovered romance over Elena's handmade pasta. Young parents brought children who learned that food could be medicine for loneliness. Every dish carried forward the wisdom of grandmothers, the patience of old-world cooking, and the irreplaceable value of feeding souls. Do you ever miss your old life? Elena asked, watching Robert expertly chop herbs with the precision his grandfather had taught him all those years ago. Every day I'm grateful I found my way back, Robert said quietly. I spent decades building an empire, but I'd forgotten how to build a meal. You taught me the difference between success and significance. Elena nodded, understanding completely. Nana always said the right people come into our lives exactly when we need them most. She just never mentioned they might be billionaires who yell across fancy restaurants. They both laughed, remembering that pivotal night when a simple plate of pasta had changed everything. Robert had kept his promise. Elena's grandmother's recipes anchored their menu, each dish prepared with the same love and tradition that had sustained generations. As the evening's first customers arrived, Elena felt her grandmother's presence in every bubbling pot, every hand-rolled gnocchi, every moment of connection between strangers who became family around their tables. Ready for another night of feeding souls? Robert asked, tying on his apron. Always, Elena replied, knowing that some dreams are worth waiting a lifetime to live. If you enjoyed this story about finding your way back to what matters most, please remember to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories that celebrate the extraordinary connections that change our lives. Thank you for joining us around our table tonight. Until we meet again, may your own meals be filled with slow love and beautiful memories.